So, when you hear the word shaman, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably something about magic, right? Or maybe rituals in some faraway jungle? Well, today we're going to push all that aside. We're going to explore shamanism for what it really is, one of humanity's oldest and, frankly, most sophisticated systems for getting knowledge.
Okay, let's just dive right in with a fascinating puzzle from the Amazon rainforest. We're talking about a psychoactive brew called ayahuasca, which, it turns out, has an incredibly specific and complex chemical recipe.
Get this, to make it work, you need the leaves from one specific bush. That bush has a powerful psychoactive compound in it. But here's the catch. That compound is totally useless on its own because an enzyme in our stomachs just destroys it instantly. So to make it work, you have to combine it with another, very specific vine that contains chemicals that switch off that enzyme. So the question is, out of 80,000 different plants in the Amazon, how on earth did they figure that out? The answer points to a completely different way of thinking about reality itself.
So here's our game plan. We're going to look at that primordial pharmacy of the Amazon, define what we mean by shamanism as a way of knowing, take a journey into the mind, meet a truly legendary shaman, trace these practices all the way back to the Stone Age, and then finally we'll ask what this ancient system might actually have to offer our modern world.
Okay, let's circle back to that Amazonian puzzle, ayahuasca. If you ask a modern scientist, the chances of finding this exact two-plant combination by just random trial and error are, well, they're basically zero. But if you ask the people who actually created it, you get a very, very different answer. They'll tell you their knowledge came directly from the plants, that the plants themselves communicated how they needed to be combined. Now that claim just completely flips our modern empirical worldview on its head. It introduces this profoundly different idea about where knowledge actually comes from.
To really wrap our heads around this, we've got to lay down a couple of key definitions. First up, what exactly is shamanism? And what's so interesting here is that it's not defined as a religion or some kind of belief system. It's a group of techniques. Think of it as a practical method, a kind of technology of consciousness that's used to get information you just can't access in your normal, everyday, waking state. And this brings us to the absolute core idea of this whole explainer. That word epistemology is key. It's basically the philosophical study of knowledge. It asks that one fundamental question. How do we know the things we know? You know, the scientific method? That's one epistemology. And what we're proposing here is that shamanism is another one, a unique and incredibly ancient way of knowing. So here's the crucial point. For the shaman, knowledge isn't something that's just locked away in books or labs. The entire universe, from the stars in the sky, to the plants in the ground, to the dreams in your head, is constantly broadcasting information. It's like this immense signal system. And the shaman's job is basically to learn how to tune in and read the signals. So the big question is, how do they actually do it? How do these practitioners tune in to this so-called signal system? Let's take a look at the shaman's toolkit. They use this whole range of really sophisticated techniques. And these aren't just random actions. They're very specific technologies designed to shift perception, to literally alter your brainwave patterns, and to enter what's often called an altered state of consciousness, or maybe more accurately, a state of heightened awareness. And what's wild is that researchers who study these states have found this remarkably consistent structure to the inner journey. It often starts with seeing geometric patterns, lines, dots, grids, things that are literally hardwired into our optic nerve. Then the mind starts to make sense of these shapes, interpreting them and turning them into real ideas. And finally, in the deepest stage, these forms can just blossom into these fully interactive visions of animals, people, and other beings.
Okay, so all of this theory is great, but let's make it real. Let's ground these ideas in the incredible life story of Maria Sabina, a shaman from the Mazatec people of Mexico. Just listen to this. This is from one of her sacred chants. You can just feel the power in her poetry, this sense of transformation and exploration. For her, these journeys weren't just some random hallucination. They were a way of investigating reality, of swimming in the immense, as she put it, to find real knowledge. Her life was one of almost unimaginable hardship. She was born into deep poverty and she lost 2 husbands. But despite all that, she felt this powerful calling to become what's called a sabia, which means one who knows, using sacred psilocybin mushrooms to lead healing ceremonies. But in 1955, her entire life changed when she shared her knowledge with some researchers from the US. This act of openness, which was really meant to bridge 2 worlds, led to this tragic backlash from her own community. They felt their sacred traditions had been profaned. She was ostracized, her home was burned to the ground, and her son was murdered. An absolutely devastating price to pay for sharing her way of knowing. The thing about Maria Sabina's story is that it's not some isolated event. Her practice is a single thread in this massive tapestry that stretches all the way back into the deepest parts of human history. In fact, we're talking about something that goes back, well, many anthropologists trace its origins back at least 30,000 years. That would make it one of the very first specialized roles in human society and maybe our planet's oldest spiritual technology. And this table does a fantastic job of showing how that original role of the shaman changed over time as societies got more complex. In hunting and gathering societies, you had the shaman, whose knowledge came from direct personal experience. But then, with the rise of agriculture and social classes, you see the priest emerge, and their knowledge is based on sacred texts. As things got even more complex politically, other specialists like the sorcerer and the medium appeared, each one kind of taking on a different piece of what the original shaman used to do. And this is where it gets really mind-blowing. Some researchers think we can see evidence of this ancient way of knowing literally etched into the walls of prehistoric caves. They've proposed that the incredible art you see in places like Lascaux in France isn't just a painting of a hunt, it's a record of the visions people experienced during shamanic journeys. And if they're right, that would mean that shamans weren't just humanity's first healers and mystics, they were also our first artists. So, this all brings us back to today. What on earth can this ancient epistemology offer a world like ours, a world that's so completely dominated by the scientific method? Well, when you put them side by side, the difference is, well, it's night and day. One way of knowing values direct, subjective participation. It's looking for a revelation from a reality it sees as an active, living signal system. The other way values detached, objective observation. It tries to create a precise representation of a reality it sees as something separate from us, something to be measured. And this quote from the shamanic healer Rolling Thunder just sums it all up perfectly. See, it's not about analyzing the plant's chemical properties from a distance. It's about entering into a dialogue with it. It's about listening. And that really leaves us with a huge question to think about. The scientific method has given us unbelievable power to measure, to analyze, and to represent the world. It is an incredibly powerful way of knowing, no question about it. But in our intense focus on objective representation, have we maybe forgotten about other ways of knowing? Have we, in our modern search for knowledge, forgotten how to listen?